Are you going to run?
Well, I don't know. That's what the next 30 days are about. What I've said is that I'll, stick my toe in the water here and see how people react and see whether energy and resources come in my direction. Folks saying, I want to help out, I think it's a good idea, or they don't. And I've said, that isn't the only way of skinning the cat. My point has been, we have a profound problem in this country with regard to debt, deficit, and government spending, and nobody's talking about it in Washington. And it's not a part of the presidential debate. I think it needs to be. And so what I've said is I'll explore a presidential run as a way of beginning that conversation. If not, I'll look at the idea of starting an advocacy group. I don't know what the right venue is, but I know that we're long overdue for a conversation that has gone dark with regard to debt, deficit, and government spending in Washington.
And you have a long history, if I may say, with the issue of fiscal responsibility, fiscal conservatism, if I can put it that way. So if you do decide to run, and I understand you got 30 days, you're going to figure that out, would it be on that issue? Is that what would drive you to say, yes, I will take a stab at this?
Yeah, it's the linchpin issue for me. And I think it's the linchpin issue for our economy. I think it's the linchpin issue in terms of national security. I think it's the linchpin issue in terms of jobs in the economy. And yet, remarkably, we have all this banner. I mean, it's amazing to me that I watched 2 Democratic presidential debates wherein there was not one sentence on debt, deficit, or government spending by either one of the moderators or one of the candidates themselves. I think that that's telling as to where we are nationally in the debate. And similarly, the president has said, I rule out any action on any of the things that drive our debt and spending numbers these days. And what has hit me, to your point, as a former member of the Budget Committee, as a former governor who inherited $1 billion financial hole and coming in as governor, is that we can't continue to wait. We can't wait another 4 years to the next presidential election cycle to have this conversation as a nation about what we do with what are clearly unsustainable numbers on, again, those 3 items.
So you're a very skilled and accomplished politician. You've won a lot of races, so you know how this works. It can't be a coincidence. As you say, we hear Democratic candidates get a debate, they don't even bring it up. By the way, the last presidential election, I don't remember either candidate talking about entitlements, which most people think you have to sort of address to really address this issue. That has to be because skilled politicians and their teams have decided people won't vote for somebody like that. It is unpopular. How can you turn that around?
Well, that's where I think we have to have a national debate, and people have to understand how dire our circumstances are. I mean, we're projected to run $1 trillion+ deficit over the next 10 years, and we've never done that before in our nation's history. We now have a sitting debt as a percentage of GDP than it's ever greater than it's ever been in peacetime. You look at the national global debt situation. I think it's telling that you were just talking to the Secretary General. You look at global debt in the wake of the 2007-2008 financial crisis. McKinsey wrote a fascinating report talking about more debt and not much in the way of deleveraging in addressing a problem that was created by too much debt. And so globally, we're at again, a sort of a powder keg level. Nationally, we're at a powder keg level. And I think we have to have this conversation with Americans wherein we say, look, these are not pleasant choices. We're going to have to make some tough choices. But if we don't, we will wait for the financial markets to do it for us. And historically, that process has been bloody for all concerned, not just in terms of jobs and economy, but the worth of their savings and their retirement accounts.
And to your point, we just showed a chart showing the debt growing up to $22 billion. We've got another crisis, so-called, facing us right now about the debt ceiling, that we're going to have to extend that to get beyond the $22 trillion. But at the same time, voters tend to say, I'd like it if you want to give me something. I don't want to hear about taking something back away. And the fact is, despite that dramatic growth in debt, we haven't had a real crisis in the bond market. And so is it understandable a voter would say, we shouldn't have to worry about it? And we have politicians including saying, we don't even have to worry about the debt.
Yeah, we've been lulled into complacency. And here's what's interesting about, we've been, in essence, on a 40-year downward slide in terms of interest rates. You can't go much below zero. I mean, to the last conversation you're having, you've got about $12 trillion of global sovereign debt now priced below zero. Again, an experiment we've never tried before in the history of man. And so you're out here at a spot we've never been at. And the question is, again, what are we going to do about it? I think you have to make real to folks how dangerous our situation is. Think about this. Interest is projected to be the fastest growing federal expenditure. So out of all the money we send to Washington, the thing that's going to be the fastest growing category is interest. And in just 1 year, our interest expenditure will be more than we spend on children in the United States of America. That's on education, that's on welfare, aid to families. In 3 years, we will spend more on interest than we do on national defense. I mean, that's why Admiral Mike Mullen, who was the former chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff, when asked, what's the biggest threat to American security, answers the national debt, not the Taliban, not the Chinese, but the national debt. And if you look at the history of civilizations, what has historically undone civilizations has been a build-up to the point of unsustainable on debt and spending. And I would argue that we're nearing that precipice right now, that we're at a much closer spot than we were 10 or 15 years ago, and that it requires action, and discussion has to lead that action.
So, Governor, it's clear you have something to say. It's something that you know about, you've been talking about for some time, something that really is not being said. That all makes perfect sense. Are you running to win, or are you running to actually inject yourself in the debate? And I'll give you a specific example. We've got a tweet here from your GOP, the Republican Party down in South Carolina, which is pretty nasty, saying the last time Mark Sanford had an idea this dumb, it killed his governorship. This makes about as much sense as that trip up the Appalachian Trail. Well, putting aside that little shot, do you have a prospect of actually winning the nomination, actually going down and getting nominated by the Republican Party, given the resistance from within the Republican Party to you?
I don't know. I think that'd be a long shot, in fairness to your point. But I think that, I mean, if you could go, and this is, I don't know if you can or you can, but if you could actually change the debate in this presidential cycle to include a focus on debt deficit government spending, it'd be worth some number of months of my life, particularly if I've already invested almost 25. As to the cheap shot, you know, that goes with the world of politics. I mean, it's well known that I'm an imperfect human being. Well, welcome to life. I mean, tragically, a lot of us do things that we regret. We wish we could push rewind play on. But, you know, that's the human condition. And the question is, should you be muzzled for the rest of your life because you've made a mistake in life? And so I've openly acknowledged that I've made a mistake. I've talked about it ad nauseum back here at home with voters. They subsequently reelected me to the United States Congress. And again, I think what was also telling about that was I just said, look, I think we need to raise the debt and deficit issue. I don't know whether I run for president, whether I start an advocacy group, and they immediately start shooting at you. I think that that's symptomatic of the way people at times circle the wagons in Trump world and don't allow that more robust conversation that I think is necessary to the betterment of all ideas. I mean, I believe in the Socratic process. Let's compare ideas. And is it a truth or not that we're at a pressing point and a precipice with regard to debt deficit government spending? I believe we are. Let's have that debate.